In this video, we will be learning the basics of facial topology for 3D characters. Having proper facial topology is important for a number of reasons, including accurate deformations during animation, having a smooth surface for sculpting, the prevention of any rendering artifacts or pinching, as well as just making your mesh easier to work on. When you're first starting out, trying to create intentional topology can be pretty intimidating. In this video, I will try to simplify the process as much as possible to hopefully make it feel more approachable. So let's get into it. This will be the head that we're retopologizing. It is a more stylized head that's available free from Adobe Fuse. It's a little more soft and less intimidating than a hyper-realistic head, but the principles taught in this video should carry over to almost any humanoid head. This will be close to our final result. I've already worked through this process to ensure edge loops line up with ease. We can hopefully spend more time learning about the fundamentals of facial topology and less time troubleshooting the rerouting of loops. Here's a quick time-lapse of the creation process of our starting point. We will be focusing on just the left side of the face at first, then mirroring our work over later. I would quickly like to mention that this is not the only way or the best way to retopologize a head. Just a simple way that will hopefully be digestible to those new to retopology. There is no catch-all topology that works for every head out there. There are good practices to follow and bad practices to avoid. So let's analyze what we have as a jumping off point. The eye is a loop of polygons that has a total of 10 polygons. The muzzle has a total of 7 polygons. Once we mirror it over to the other side, it would have a total of 14. The loop of the mouth currently has 6, and when we mirror it over, it would have a total of 12. The frame of the face has a total of 14 polygons. Again, mirroring it over would double it, putting it to 28. The ear is at 10, and the crown on top is currently at 11, and then it would get mirrored over and be 22. More edge loops will be added as we go along, so these numbers aren't hard set, but let's get started. So let's jump to the Topology tab, and again, it should be a tab located up here. If you're not seeing it, it might just not be starred, so again, hit this little star only button, make sure that it is starred, and then you can either hit that or not hit it. Otherwise, this little menu could be hidden. If you click on it, you can see that it hides or shows. So you want to go to Layout, Switch Bar, Show Switch Bar, or you could go to Layout, Layouts, and just go to the Topology tab. Any of those methods work. So we need to make sure that our high poly mesh or our reference mesh is visible. So let's go ahead and hit the little eyeballs on that, making those visible. Let's go ahead and rename this Retopo Head. The first thing that we'll do is activate the Topology Pen tool. We will then connect the loop that frames the face with the loop that goes around the ear. This is going to be in 3 spots, 1, 2, 3, and that just snaps and welds. With the same frame loop, we're going to connect the muzzle where it lines right up. Next, we will fill in the polygons in the negative space in between the mouth and the muzzle. So again, just hold the Shift key, click and drag, and that snaps. So again, this is pretty much just connecting the dots at this point, and then stop right here. Now what I'm going to do is hold the Shift key, hover over this edge, and middle mouse click. What that's going to do is add an edge loop. Just undo that real quick. And if I hold the middle mouse button, I can kind of slide where I want this to be. And for right now, I'm just going to put it right in the middle. So pay attention how I join these loops right here. So what's going to happen is I'm going to pull out one polygon. It can snap here, that's fine. I'm going to bring this one right up to the corner of the nose, and then this one I'm going to connect right here. So this area right here is going to be my first use of a pole. And the point of this pole is to redirect the edge flow. So what we're going to do is pull this polygon down for the nose, then connect this edge to this edge. And then right here, what we're going to do is both of these edges, we're going to take these over to the left. So let's reactivate our Topology Pen tool, hold Shift, click and drag, send this one to the middle, connect it here. And then this one, same thing, it should connect right here. And again, if these aren't snapping like you'd want, you can kind of pull them a little bit farther, and then pull them back and snap them. And then at this point, if I want, you don't need to do this all the time, but I have a hotkey to center my vertices, so I can go ahead and hit that now, and it kind of just centers these one at a time. And now this is a good starting off point for this geometry. From here, I will be adding a total of 5 polygons that will connect the top loop of the muzzle back into the loop that was originally the frame of the face. So there's going to be one here. This one can go ahead and connect right to the eye. This next one can connect to the eye. Our fourth one can connect to the eye as well. And this one is going to connect right to that top loop. Now it should be fairly easy to fill in the rest of these polygons for the face. Right here and right here, we're going to be making a 5-sided pole to help redirect the flow of geometry. So let's activate the topology pen. And if you're zoomed out too far, you might have trouble with snapping. So if you just zoom in, it should alleviate that problem. And again, I'm not really focused on fine-tuning where the location of every vertex is. I'm just getting this rough geometry in here, and I can manipulate where it's at later. So we're going to add 2 polygons here. Now this is where that flow is going to be redirected. Instead of connecting this one to here, what we're going to do is pull this one down, have it connect to just one vertex, and now we should have a nice little grid pattern to fill in the rest of these. And at any time we can go in and tweak these. We'll probably do that in a little bit, but it's okay to tweak a few as you go. So let's add 1 strip of polygons under the chin. And again, if you have some weird snapping issues, you can always pull a polygon farther back and then adjust the verts individually. And again, this is just kind of creating that curvature of the jaw. Now let's fill in the back of the head a little bit. So we just filled in these 4 polygons. Now we're going to use these 3 edges here and just wrap this around to the back of the head. And then we can make sure that these are centered. Again, on your Edit tab here, there's a center in the X. And I want to do these verts individually. If I grab all of them at one time, it's going to take their average and center that. We actually want to center these one at a time. Then I can right-click, and it'll grab an entire edge loop, and I can kind of adjust these. So let's quickly start filling the polygons in for the top of the head. Another thing to note, the polygons on the back of the head and the top of the head, these aren't going to deform a lot, unlike the ones around the mouth and the eyes where the character is going to potentially be blinking or looking around, opening and closing their mouth. So just know that these polygons back here can have a larger density, or they're bigger polygons. That's completely okay. So to fill in the top of this head, what I want to avoid is a pole, think a globe sphere, where we have kind of a circle of polygons and then a bunch of cuts that all lead to one vertex on the top. So we're just going to grab these 3 polygons here, 1, 2, 3, and extend these out towards the center. So let's go ahead and do that. 1, 2, 3. Hold Shift, right click. It's the second one, and the third one. And then we can go ahead and center those on the X. And again, just when we center these, they're actually not going to stick to the surface. They're just centering, because that's what the hotkey set up to do. So at some point, we're going to have to come in and readjust these so they stick to the surface, but at this point, it's completely fine. So filling in the rest of this, could potentially flare this out just a little bit so our gap's not as large. And we should have a pretty good gap here where you should either be able to use the bridge tool or the topology pen to bridge the gap. So this kind of rounds off the top of the head. And again, we'll probably go through and do a quick pass where we kind of adjust all these verts so everything's sitting on here a little bit more nicely. But for now, it's looking pretty good. So let's just finish the top of this head. You can kind of see where these polygons line up almost perfectly at this point. So let's just snap these all in place. And again, there isn't going to be any rerouting of polygons. There is a pole that we created right here, but it's to redirect this flow back towards the back of the head. And again, once you start working with topology more and start kind of doing your own thing, you can get the hang of how to redirect flow or redirect edge flow. So looking at our model, right now there's a pretty big gap between this edge and this edge, and we could just take this edge and move it over, but realistically we're going to want a little bit more geometry to work with the nostril, and it'd also probably be good to give a little bit more geometry to round out the chin and to work with the lips. So using the topology tool, let's hold the shift key, hover over an edge and middle click, and what that's going to do is it's going to add a little loop of polygons for us, and you'll see, let's just double click on this so we can see all where it went. It kind of screwed up a little bit right here, but we can touch that up, but it goes all the way around to the back of the head. So let's really quickly clean this up. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. And just using our hotkey, let's make sure that those vertices are centered. So you'll notice this edge went right down into the lip. Now we kind of want to have some horizontal symmetry here. So let's go ahead and add that same edge loop right here. So use the topology pen, hold the shift key, pick an edge, middle mouse click. Let's just put that right in the middle. So we'll go ahead and use the right mouse button to just shift these edges over a little bit, just to space them out a little bit better. Now let's go ahead and add a little bit of detail for our nostril. What we're going to do is just rely on our normal modeling tools. So I'm just going to grab these two polygons, hit B to bevel, and scale those in, and then drop that tool, so just hit the spacebar, B to bevel again, and then I'm just going to grab this little arrow and pull this back. So now I have the topology to make a better nostril hole. It just isn't in place. So let's go ahead and move that in place real quick. And again, you can take a little bit extra time to go in and kind of fine tweak these. I wouldn't spend too much time though, because we are going to be slowly adding more geometry. So a lot of that I like to add and do at the end. So this next thing we're going to do is, realistically, this nostril is currently going to be a 6-sided cylinder, you could think of it as. So what we want to do is add a little bit more topology in here. The other thing we want to do is, if we look at our nose from the side, we could use a little bit more definition right here. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select 3 edges. Let's jump to our modeling tools. We're going to use loop slice with slice selected turned on. So what this is going to result in is just 2 edges created right here and here. Let's go ahead and select these edges down here and do that same operation. Loop slice, make sure that our slice is good. Then we're going to go ahead and drop that loop slice tool. Now what we need to do is connect this set of loops with this set of loops without making a weird set of triangles. So a really cool trick you can do to do this, so I'm just going to switch to the edge slice tool. I'm going to left click on this vertice. I ideally would like a vertice right here, so I'll click right here. And then I'll left click right here. So again, how Modo works, it's a little bit weird how it did that tool. I'm just going to hit the space bar to drop the tool and kind of look and see what happened. So it added an edge here, but it didn't add an edge here. So let's just reactivate the edge slice tool. And now I can click from here to here again, which is kind of what I originally wanted. And then what we can do is connect this vertice to this vertice right here. And just like that, we now have a 3-pole right here, and we kind of redirected the flow. So now the flow of the nose loops down around into itself and then back into the side of the face. So now we can go ahead, jump back to the topology tools, grab the topology pen. I can just kind of touch on all these vertices, kind of move them back into place. and take advantage of that extra geometry we just made. So let's go ahead and add another edge loop inside of the nose. We're not going to get too detailed on this. So hold the Shift key, middle mouse click, and then I can go in and adjust these. At this point, we haven't really given any love to the eye, so let's go ahead and add 2 extra edge loops. So Topology pen, Shift, middle mouse click. Again, I'm trying to make that line up with that high poly there. And then this one I can just put like a happy medium in between the two. And now I can just come in. I'm not going to spend a lot of time fine-tuning these because we're going to be adding some more edge loops a little bit later. So at this point, it might be a good time to finish off the neck. This will be a really easy one. So we have the Topology pen activated. What I'm going to do is these first 4 polygons, I'm going to go ahead and extrude these down. And realistically, I don't want too much topology down here. So let's do a little bit of reduction down here. So I'm going to grab 2 from this edge that we just pulled down. I'm going to add 2 more polygons. Go ahead and shift these over a little bit to make it a little more even. Then add 1 more right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of wrap these polygons back into themselves. So instead of this all coming down like this, what I'm going to do is pull this edge over. Something like this. Have that one do the same thing. Now instead of there being 3 edges right here, 1, 2, 3, there's now only 2 because of this 3 pull right here. Let's go ahead and pull down our last 2 polygons, fill that in, and then this we can kind of respace out as we need so it fits the chin. Let's really quickly add 2 more, and these would kind of take it to the base of the chin, somewhere in there. So let's pull this edge down a total of 2 times. And then it should be pretty straightforward to fill in the rest of this gap. Filling in the back of the head, we might need to bring some of these edges over a little bit. Just be mindful of right here, we had created a little 5 pull. That kind of redirects. We had our original loop of the ear, and then our original loop of the frame of the face. And then right here we created a 5 pull, so these would all flow down into the neck a little better. Grab that Topology pen and just fill out the rest of this. So the rest of the neck should be pretty easy to fill in. If you're fighting with the Topology pen, just zoom in a little bit and it makes it easier to work with. So that is a little bit more straightening will work for now. So now something that I want to do is right now, if I look at this from the side, we're getting a little bit of a bubble out here. Realistically, this loop that went through was kind of big. So I just want to add an edge loop. The other thing it's going to do that's good is it's going to give us a little bit more geometry for the chin as well. So overall, having a few more polygons in here won't hurt at all. So hold Shift, middle click, keep that around the center, and that should be good to go. That's looking a lot better. So right now our eye is sitting at the original 10 edges total going around. So what we're going to do is go ahead and add 1 edge loop on the top and 1 edge loop on the bottom. That'll give us a total of 12 edges going around. So let's grab the Topology pen, hold Shift, middle mouse click, and again you can see where this loop goes down into the mouth. It's just going to give us a little bit more to work with when we start working on the mouth. Let's grab this one as well at about the halfway point. And again, you're going to have to probably doctor this stuff, kind of babysit it a little bit. The other thing you could take advantage of, just to even this out, is go ahead and grab your edge as far as you need to grab it. Looks like the whole way, so I'll just hit the up arrow a few times. Then I'm going to hit the S key, or again, you have the edge slide button right here, either or. And I can left click and drag, and what that's going to do, the edge slide, this edge slide, is actually better than the hotkey S1, because it actually will kind of suction cup your mesh to the surface. So we'll kind of move that, double click this one. Let's deselect those edges, edge slide, and just make the little gap between here a little bit better. This one as well, we could probably slide a little bit as well. So again, realistically, you can spend a good amount of time tweaking this, and I'll go through and probably speed it up. But at this point, the base topology there is really good, and it'll work out just fine. So now we have a total of 12 edges for our eye. And the other thing I don't want to forget is normally you want to keep that symmetry going, so I just added this edge loop here. So let's add another edge loop right here for the mouth. And the other thing that I want you to notice is what's going to happen when I add this is it's going to come down here and it's going to wrap right back into the chin, or back into its mirrored edge, I guess you could say. So topology pen, hold shift, middle mouse, and it just splits the difference there really well. And at any time we could come in and space these out a little bit more. Again, you usually want to have evenly spaced polygons. You don't want to have a bunch of edges like this one that's really, really close together, unless it's needed for like the silhouette or something with animation. Something like that. We'll go in and smooth these out here later. So at this point, we haven't really spent that much time on the mouth. So let's go in and give that a little bit of attention just so it looks a little bit better and it's more filled out. So this is going to be the corner of the mouth. So I just want to be careful that I kind of keep the shape overall, but I don't get things overly close. Again, right now we're still in the phase where we're just kind of blocking out the topology. We're not really going in there and trying to get perfect detail everywhere. So let's go ahead and take this pretty much all the way up to the split in the lip. And again, you might need to zoom in. Again, what I like to do usually is I will intentionally not get too close to an edge because I don't want snapping like this to happen. So maybe something like this, and then I'll just manually go in and move things where I need them to be. And again, the other thing I want you to pay attention to is I'm not like accidentally making any triangles like this. I'm keeping this same flow, I'm just insetting it once. And just another way to look at this, let's say this loop wasn't here, just delete it for now. I'm going to select these edges here. Effectively what I'm doing is an extrude and then kind of scaling this in to some extent. So this is the topology that's getting created, and then I'm just placing it more accurately. So I mean, technically you could do that. You could just use the extrude tool and then replace everything. Doesn't really matter. So this, I want to be kind of mindful of the shape of his lips here. This doesn't have to be 100% perfect. But once I have something like this, now I can really quickly add another edge loop to get the volume of his lips. Right now you're seeing it's really flat here. So I can hold shift, middle mouse click, something like that. And you can see that all those verts stick right to the surface. Again, we get a little bit of annoyance here just because of the camera angle. And we could maybe even put one more edge loop in there. We don't want it to get too dense, but something like this should be fine. And I'm going to just go ahead, hit my hotkey a few times to make sure that I'm centered on all these pieces, something like this. And again, in this video, I'm not going to go over in depth of how to create like a mouth bag or everything to do with human head topology. It's just more getting the gist of the face topology going. So at this point, the only thing we haven't really touched is the ear. And ears can be really wonky depending on what shapes and stuff are going on inside of your ear. So in this demonstration, I'm going to keep this fairly simple. So what I'm going to do is just use the extrude tool, pull it out, let's actually turn snapping off, scale this down. So now I'm just going to kind of place all these. Let's go ahead and use the rotate tool to get this a little bit nicer. But again, at this point, nothing is really snapped. Let's use that topology pen. And let's just go around kind of where the ear curve starts to rotate around into itself. And then we can just easily add another loop. So again, in this demonstration, we're not going to really worry about the hole in the ear, at least for right now. So something like that. And then I can quickly shift middle mouse click, add another edge loop, and now I can just kind of doctor this up and make it look as good as I need it to be. And again, this is something that, let's say that you needed a little bit more topology for whatever reason. I could hold shift, add an edge loop right here. I just don't want to make it to where there's a ton of edge loops going down the neck right here. I just want to make sure that they're fairly evenly spaced. So if you need more topology, you can always, like this is a good spot, you could potentially add a loop and then evenly space these. I'm not going to commit to either of those loops. I want to keep this at a 10-sided ear. But what you can do is just kind of make sure that you can get the shape that you want. If you don't, that's when you have to go in and experiment and add more topology. But in our case, this is going to be fine for the ear. Let's go ahead and double click this, extrude that edge and scale it in one more time. And then let's just go ahead and bridge these together. Again, keeping this very, very simple. So if this was a game model, let's say, realistically, this topology for the ear, the silhouette reads just fine, and you could bake pretty much any type of ear, the normal map, onto that ear. So at this point, I'm going to mirror over my geometry to the right side of the character's face and turn on the symmetry tool. I'll just take some time now to align the edge flow a little bit better. I'm not going to be adding or changing any edges, just cleaning stuff up a bit. I want to make sure my polygons are pretty evenly spaced. Now would also be a good time to just look at the low poly by itself and make sure everything looks good. So aside from tweaking vertices, there's one more major thing that we need to do to finish this up. And that's to close the eye hole. So there's a total of 12 edges going around, so it should be fairly easy to close this up using all quads. So I'm going to start by just doing an edge extend and scale that in. So activating the topology tool, we should be able to just bridge the gap between these with all quads, and everything lines right up. And again, if we need to add another edge loop in here or kind of tweak these so they match this little canal a little bit better, we can definitely take the time to do that. At this point, our end result is all quads, and we've worked in the needed edge loops for animation. From here, there's a number of things we can do to modify or finalize our heads, and this will depend on what you personally need for your project. I do quickly want to point out a few changes that we could make or areas that we could improve upon. So the first thing we could do is subdivide the mesh by hitting the D key. And since we have all quads, it subdivides extremely nicely. So another benefit to having nice edge loops is if I needed a little bit more definition somewhere, I could hold shift and middle mouse click, and I could add another edge loop and get a little bit more definition where it was needed. And again, you just have to check where you're making the edge loop, because some of the areas it'll give you something kind of predictable, but other times it might wrap around and go into the neck or do something that you're not really expecting. So as far as some of the bad things go with this mesh that I'm not really fond of, I've already mentioned the ear. In a pinch, what we currently have would work for something like a low poly game mesh, but ideally I would personally perfect that a little bit more. But the one thing that I would change right away would be how the nose works. So if we get in here and look, normally what I like to have is one edge loop that I can select that pretty much follows up the symmetry line. And you can see that edge is getting broken right here. So let's go in and I'll show you guys a quick way of how to fix this. So even though this is all quads, I'm still going to change up how it works. So right now, that problem area was caused right in here. So let's go ahead and remove this edge and this edge. Then what we're going to do is just switch to our edge slice tool, and I'm going to go from this edge. It was coming up to this point right here. I'm just going to take it out right here. And the good thing about this is it's going to actually give a little bit more curvature to the nose. And then we'll do the same thing on the bottom. Again, instead of going down to this point, it comes in right here. And again, we have our symmetry tool on, so that's happening on both sides. Then I can just switch to our topology pen and just change this up a little bit. So here, we kind of broke our quads. We have an n-gon right here that's 5-sided and a 5-sided n-gon right here. So what I'm going to do, switch back to my edge slice tool and go from this point right here, just go down one, and then this one I'm just going to stop right kind of in the middle of the polygon, and then go over, something like this. And then I can just hold the shift key to kind of start a new edge slice, so from here to here, and just do something like that. So again, now we're gonna turn this was one quad, now it's 3. It redirects back up into here, so this is now all quads. And again, if we were to divide that, it all works really nicely. So let's address this n-gon right here. There's kind of a few different ways we can do it. We can use that same trick and have a polygon selected. Do something like this. So now the tip of the nose has a little bit more definition to it. Or what we could do would be give this curvature to the nose a little bit more detail by taking this edge and sending it right up the head. And again, technically this edge, we could wrap this edge loop all the way around and have it go back into the neck, or we could go somewhere like right here and do that same technique where we terminate an edge out to where it kind of, the loop goes back and loops back into itself. So either of those options would work. And we don't necessarily need to do it right there. We could go down one or even go up one more. Doesn't matter, that technique is fairly versatile. For this, I actually prefer that first method, so let's go ahead and stick with that one. There we go, and that's all quads, and again we can subdivide that and see how it works. So another thing I'm not very fond of is this little section of the nose right here, especially this pole. I'm not going to go too far into detail kind of deconstructing this, but one thing you could do if you needed a little bit more definition is you could select 2 of these edges and do an edge loop, or again, using our topology pen, hold shift and middle click. What that's going to do is again give you another loop that it literally loops back around into itself, so it stays contained within the nose. It just gives you a few more verts to kind of mess around with and round out the nostril and give a little bit more definition to this pit of the nose right here. So we'll just undo that and go back to our base. There we go. So we're going to call this good for now. I would recommend saving a base mesh of a head similar to this out so you can quickly use it as a starting point for future projects. Hopefully this video helped you out with getting started with facial topology. The process can be both fun and frustrating, but with practice you should be able to work through almost any problem.